Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 8th New South Wales Family Daycare Association webinar in the PD in Your Pocket series. So tonight is all about sustainability. My name's Elizabeth, and I will be your facilitator for this evening. Sustainability is a topic that I'm really passionate about, and I've had a lot of experience delivering it in early childhood settings. So I hope that we have a really great session together tonight. So I'm just going to share the PowerPoint with you now as we move through. So before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country on which we meet today. I know we're on many different lands with many different traditional owners, but I'm currently presenting from the land of the Gadigal and the Wangal people, and I'd like to acknowledge them and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. For generations, Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander people have been calling for greater protections of their lands, their waters, their sacred sites and their cultural heritage from exploitation and destruction. So this is why this year's NAIDOC week was themed Healing Country. So really appropriate linkage there for our topic this evening. Now, before we begin, I want to just go through with you how PD in Your Pocket works. I'm sure if you've attended previous sessions with us, you're quite familiar, but just to remind you, so first of all, you received a resource booklet and we sent you the link in a specially prepared for a specially prepared booklet, and you've had about a week to read through it, whether that be on your phone or your iPad or your computer. If you haven't received it, you can find the link on the screen if you're watching this presentation live. If you are listening to it as a podcast, the link is www.nswfdc.org.au/PD-in-a-pocket/sustainability. Secondly, you receive great content through these sessions. So I'm sure most of you know this is the content this evening. So we have this webinar and then followed by an interview with an expert on sustainability, which we will have a little while later. And then we'll have about 20 minutes for question time. So for those of you participating in this live session, we aim to wrap up by about 9 p.m. After this session, you'll then receive the follow-up reading. I just want to recap on this. So I'm not sure if all of you realise, but you actually get 2 different written resources sent to you. So the first one comes before the session and the second one comes after. So this is the second one that you can see on the slide here. You won't get this until after tonight's session. We usually send them out when we send out your certificates. So it's a whole separate publication that has further reading that you may want to do on the topic. There are always some suggestions of videos or pictures for those who can't read, well as reading materials for those who are beginners on the topic, and then also reading for those who are quite advanced in the topic of sustainability. So it's a really good mix for everyone. There's resources appropriate for all different levels. If you are already on top of this, then that's fantastic. If you've missed out on the fact that you get those 2 separate readings, you can go back to the website and download the further readings list for other topics. And remember, you can always discuss it on our Facebook page. So when you enrolled, we invited you to join a closed Facebook group with other educators and family daycare connections. So you can discuss the topic with all of them. You can tell them what you're currently doing at your service and find out what they're doing at theirs. It's been really great to see more and more educators sharing pictures and their practice on this closed Facebook page. And we'd love to see you do more of this. So don't be shy. Share the great things that you do with your children at your service. Finally, if I can just mention, you also get a survey, and we'd really appreciate it if you complete this. It's important that we can show that our PD in your pocket is valuable to the department, and then we can ensure that we can provide further projects like this one, and provide you with these fantastic resources. And if there's any type of feedback that you'd like to give, we'd really greatly appreciate that. If you have any other questions about PD in your pocket, you can email info@nswfdc.org.au. Okay, so let's get into this evening's content. So this session has been funded through the New South Wales Department of Education Sector Development Program. And the booklet that you were all sent explains the whys of sustainability, why it's so important. So tonight we're going to go over this a little, and then we're really going to focus on the how. So how do we implement that in our service? So really practical information. And we're going to concentrate on three main hows. The first one being how you can work towards your family daycare using less of the Earth's resources, how you can help children love nature, and how you can educate children about sustainability. So they're the three hows that we're going to have a look at. So before we go any further, let's get a really good understanding of what is sustainability. I'm going to play a short video for you now. It goes for about 3 minutes, about what sustainability is. So this will give us a really good overview, so we're all on the same page and we understand what kind of things that we'll be discussing tonight.
What is sustainability? One of the more common definitions of sustainability used worldwide is from the UN Brundtland Commission. They say sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So put simply, sustainability is about our kids and our grandkids. How do we live today so that they can thrive and future generations can also have a good life? Our planet has many resources that we depend on for food, for housing, and many of those resources can replenish. You can cut down a tree and grow new trees. You can catch fish and there will be more fish. But that only works if you do it at a rate that these systems can replenish. We call that the replacement rate. You could think of it as a bathtub, and you're draining the bathtub and filling the bathtub at the same rate. And if you do that, then the level of the water should be able to stay stable. We call that equilibrium. It's not that you're not using any resources, you are, but you're doing it at a rate that the systems are able to stay somewhat steady. Right now, and over the past few decades, what we're seeing is that we are consuming resources much faster than the replacement rate. And the result of that, draining the bathtub faster than filling it, is that those levels are going down. We're seeing fisheries disappearing and other ocean life. We're seeing forests disappearing. Of course, everyone is familiar with the impacts of climate change and, other impacts of this level of consumption, plastics in the ocean, all of these problems. So ultimately, sustainability is about understanding how all of this is connected, understanding that when you make a decision to buy a smartphone, you are impacting someone's life on the other side of the planet who's involved in mining the materials to put in that smartphone. So sustainability is about systems thinking. One of the other big frameworks that we use to talk about sustainability is the 3 E's. In business, we call that the triple bottom line. Some people call it the 3 legs of the stool. And that's environment, economy, and equity. And it's not just about understanding that we need to manage all of those. It's understanding how they're connected. So if you only look at short-term economic profit, then you're not going to end up with a thriving economy in the long term. If you're only looking at conserving the environment without thinking about economics and understanding, how people are making their livelihood, you also may not end up with a thriving society. And if you aren't looking at equity, you're going to end up with a few people that have most of the resources and many people who are hungry and not living a good life. And that's not really a successful human society either. So sustainability is really about addressing all of those and understanding the connections between them.
Okay, so one of the best explanations of what sustainability is that sustainability addresses the ongoing capacity of Earth to maintain all life. And we can understand through that just how important this sustainability is. And that video gave a really good overview of big scale sustainability. And through tonight's session, we're going to draw into that and see how it's applicable in our ECEC settings in family daycare. So why is sustainability so important in early education and care? Because it's needed, and it's quite specifically spoken about in element 3.2.3 of the National Quality and Framework. Environmentally responsible. So the service cares for the environment and supports children to become environmentally responsible. It's also part of the practices of the learning framework. So in the EYLF, we're told to use outdoor learning spaces because they foster an appreciation of the natural environment, develop environmental awareness, and provide a platform for ongoing environmental education. And it also mentions that environments and resources can also highlight our responsibilities for a sustainable future and promote children's understanding about their responsibility to care for the environment. They can foster hope, wonder, and knowledge about the natural world. It's another outcome in the learning framework. Outcome 2, children are connected with and contribute to their world. Children become socially responsible and show respect for the environment. Educators are told that they promote this learning when they do things such as provide children with access to a range of natural materials that's in the environment. They model respect, care, and appreciation for the natural environment. So these are all things that you can do on a daily basis. When educators find ways of enabling children to care for and learn from the land. Consider the nature of children's connectedness to the land and demonstrate respect for community protocols. Share information and provide children with access to resources about the environment and the impact of human activities on environments. Embed sustainability in daily routines and practices. So not just doing it as one-off tokenistic planned experiences, but having things embedded in your daily program and your daily routine that you do every day with the children. And look for examples of interdependence in the environment and discuss the ways that life and health of living things are all interconnected so that we're part of a bigger picture. Now, sustainability is most important because we're educating children. It is children who will inherit our planet that is currently being depleted. So we can inspire children to restore and repair the planet as educators. That's something that we can do now for those children. We can instill a love of lifelong learning about nature. With the help and guidance from educators, very young children can lead change towards a more sustainable future. But we need to teach them why they should be doing that and how they can do it. Sustainability addresses the ongoing capacity of Earth to maintain all life, and children need the Earth that they have. So if we want children to value nature and develop a lifelong care of it, we need to instill in them at this very young age an appreciation and a respect for natural environment. Because if they're not connected to it and if they don't see any worth or value in it, they're a lot less likely to make sure that they care for it throughout their life. So now we know the whys, we're going to move on to the hows. And our first topic is how you can work towards your family daycare using less of the Earth's resources. So by now, most educators probably have the basics of using less of the Earth's resources in your family daycare and your home. You probably use things like compost bins with the children, recycle as much as possible, turn off lights when they're not being used, and encourage children to do the same. So conserve water where possible and use recycled materials with children. So see, these are some of the basic things that we actually see a lot of already being implemented in family daycare services. But we need to go further than this. So what are you using in your family daycare, and how sustainable is your use of our Earth's resources? This is a really good reflective question to take back to your service and have a think about what you're currently doing and what you're using and where you could possibly cut back. Now, a great thing to do to assist you in achieving this goal is to do an audit of your family daycare. There's some great resources here and the links attached. So you could either purchase the Eco Smart booklet from the New South Wales Early Childhood Environmental Education Network, the ECEEN, which links the audit to the NQS, or a free one also exists at the web address on the screen from Victoria's Community Childcare Cooperative. So you've got a couple of options there. There will be links to both of these in the further readings guide that we'll send you, so you can get them in there. An audit is basically a way of checking what you're doing now, and the audit goes through this in categories such as air quality, biodiversity, cleaning, electrical equipment, and the NQS said before that the ECEEN1 works its way through the NQS, so they're really closely linked. So it's a fantastic thing to do if you're leading up to a quality and assessment rating, or if you just want to really have a good, thorough overview of everything you're currently doing in your service. And what you'll find is it addresses things to you that you could be doing better or that you could change, or it will also identify your strengths, things that you're already doing really well. You could go through each room and work out what goes into and out of that room, and are there ways to make it more sustainable? And don't forget, you can always get the children and families involved as well. So I'm now going to make some specific suggestions about making your family daycare more sustainable. I'm going to start with ideas that are lower effort and cost, and then move towards ones that are higher in effort and cost. So all of these ideas come from a booklet called a Sustainability Resource Kit for Early Childhood Educators. And we'll also put a copy of this on the website for you to access later. And they are in categories. So the first category that we're looking at is energy. So do you, or could you, and while I go through these, please feel free to take notes and maybe start having a think about what you do at your family daycare. So do you, or could you, maximize the use of natural light and ventilation throughout the day? So a little bit harder in the winter months, and sometimes in the heat of summer as well, in those peak seasons, it can sometimes be a bit challenging. But as much as possible, opening the rooms up in your home, using that natural light and turning off the lights, and having ventilation as much as possible instead of air conditioning units or heating. Turn off lights each day when children are resting. Place signs near all light switches, air conditioning, the power points, to act as reminders to turn off when not needed. And where appropriate, you could even make these little visual signs as opposed to text, so that the children can get an understanding and help out when they can. Use a checklist at the end of each day to make sure all unnecessary lights and electric appliances are turned off. And turning off at the power point can make a big difference as opposed to just turning things off at the switch or having things on standby. Use fans where possible instead of air conditioners, and using the correct temperature on an air conditioner. So the ideal is we want to have 18 to 20 degrees in winter and 24 to 25 in summer. And section off rooms where heating and cooling where you need it the most, rather than heating up or cooling down the whole home, just using the sections of the home that you need. Make sure children are appropriately dressed, which will then result in them requiring less heating or cooling. Tell your families about the actions that you're taking to reduce energy. So include energy saving tips in your newsletters or emails, anything that you're doing in your home. Parents could potentially be doing it in their home as well. So you could really use this as an opportunity to inspire families and look at ways to reduce their own energy use. Always use cold water for washing and wait for a full load before running the machine and using the eco cycle if you have that available. Minimize the use of the clothes dryer, so instead using your clothesline. Switch to, or for example, if you've got wet weather, maybe in winter and you've got the heating going, then use that as an opportunity to not just heat the room and warm you and the children, but also dry some clothes in the room. Switch to more energy efficient lighting if possible. When purchasing new or replacement electrical appliances, make sure that you look at the energy ratings and try and choose things with the high energy star ratings. The more stars, the more savings. And reduce heating through west-facing windows using awnings, tinted windows, and blinds. So they can do a lot of good in terms of blocking out that heat. Consider installing a solar hot water system or solar power system if that's possible. So as I said, those last ones, they're getting quite costly and can require a lot of effort. So you've just got to find where you sit in these and how much you can actually action at the moment. Just even the smaller steps can make a big difference if we're all doing them together. Now, why is reducing our energy consumption in our family daycare service so important? You might remember this iconic photo of the child on the boat during last year's bushfires on the south coast, or perhaps you lived in an area that was subject to fires. So the catastrophic, unprecedented fire conditions that impacted on New South Wales were aggravated by climate change. Bushfire risk was exacerbated by record-breaking drought, very dry fuels and soil, and record-breaking heat. Climate change is driven by greenhouse gas pollution due to human activities. So that includes the burning of fossil fuels, coal, oil, gas for energy, for the electricity you use in your home, fueling and long-term warming. The burning of fossil fuels produce greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide that trap heat in the atmosphere, causing global warming and therefore the climate change. So it's really up to each of us to do what we can to reduce the use of energy and to reduce global warming. Okay. So the next area we need to look at is waste. This is generally one that the family daycare services are really good at. Something here, I'll start with, again, the lower effort, lower cost actions and move up to the higher ones. So again, just gauge what you're able to do and where you sit on the scale. So you could do, you use reusable shopping bags every time you shop instead of plastic bags? Be aware of packaging waste and seek out products with low to no packaging. There's a lot of options now where we can minimise soft plastics, taking our own bags, even wrapping and packaging. There's a lot of things that we can do on a reusable scale now. Ask families to bring in recyclable items for children activities and set up a useful box or a box construction area to store them in, and encourage children to build and create using the recycled items. It's fantastic for encouraging children's imagination and using these everyday items that we're going to go straight into the bin. We can detour that and give them another life and get the children creative. Set up a paper collection point in your craft area that encourages children to reuse one-sided paper. And something else that's great to do is you can ask any of your families that work in offices, obviously being mindful of any confidential information on the paper, but if their office has some, even if it's just one blank on one side, printing paper that they no longer need. Sometimes some offices use those big project papers that you can use for painting easels. So ask the families what they have access to and get them to bring it into your service rather than you going out and buying poster paper or reams of A4 paper for drawing. There's so many other places we could get it from. Encourage families to reduce food packaging by introducing a package-free lunchbox initiative. Lots of things now, those great beeswax wraps that you use instead of cling wrap. They're great for wrapping sandwiches or fruit. And all you need to do when you finish is just give it a rinse, and it can save huge amounts of soft plastic and foil and Ziploc bags now. There's great reusable Ziploc bags that you can use. And again, you can just rinse them out. Most of them are dishwasher safe. Place colour-coded recycling boxes in your kitchen to match the colours of big bins. So having red for general waste, yellow for recycling, and green for organic matter or whatever it is in your local council. And that can be a nice visual thing so that the children see the connection of sorting things in your own home, in your kitchen, and then taking it out to the bigger bins. You can also reduce the amount of mass going into your bins by having things like worm farms or composting bins. And what that does, it takes out all that or a lot of that organic matter and food waste out of the bins, and it processes them in a different way. So you're really reducing how much is going out in the bins. And then you can use the product from the worm farm and the liquids, and you can use that on your vegetable garden. You can also look for opportunities to use recycled materials in your program. There's so much you can do with that. Another thing that is a great thing, and I think a lot of educators may have already done this, but moving to an online program and notification so that children's documentations, newsletters, all of that is no longer being printed out. It's all done through technology. So e-newsletters, portfolios on apps or websites. It's a really good way of reducing that paper. I know, 10 years ago, the industry was doing a lot more printing than it is now because we had to communicate all those things with families and we had to do a lot of documentation. So there's lots of great ways you can do that without using paper now. Now, nappies, these get a slide all on their own because we know that these are a really big issue. So one of the biggest creators of waste in family daycare and in education and care services in general is disposable nappies. So 3.75 million disposable nappies are used each day in Australia and New Zealand, and it takes about 1 cup of crude oil to make each nappy. So that is a lot of landfill, with conventional disposable nappies estimated to take up to 150 years to break down. So, I mean, those facts are really, really upsetting for someone who, you know, wants to do the best for the environment. So do you already use modern cloth nappies at your service? There are a lot of different cloth nappies now available. Obviously, new technologies and stuff. We've come a long way from the terry towel cloths and, you know, the big white ones with the pins. There's a lot of different things on the market now. Or are you asking families what they use and trying to incorporate that at your service? So you need to decide if offering to use a family's own nappies is a good choice for you as a business, and if it's doable for you. It is clear which one is better for the environment. Obviously, those reusable ones are much more environmental friendly, but we acknowledge that the educator's sanity is also important. So you just have to decide whether it's something that will work for you. You can have a Google of cloth nappies in childcare, and there's lots of information about cloth versus disposable nappies. So it's just a point to think about and make that decision. Okay, so the next thing we're going to discuss is water. So water is another big area that we need to think about in family daycare. Again, I'm going to move through the tips from the easiest and cheapest to the hardest and more expensive actions that you can take, and you can decide what would work for you. So have you thought about using the eco cycle on washing machines and dishwashers and only running when full? So really waiting till you've got a full load of clothes or the dishwasher's full and then doing a wash. And most of the time, if you're giving things a quick rinse or scraping things into the bin, those quicker cycles can be just as effective. So use a full sink of water to wash or soak items such as art supplies rather than running water. So, you know, if you've got 10 paint pots to clean and you're running water that whole time, you could go through about 6 sinks full of water. Whereas if you fill up one sink and reuse that one over again. Tell your families about the actions that you're taking again with reducing water, and include water saving tips again in your newsletter. And here, just like energy, we're trying to inspire families to whatever we're going to do in our home, you can do in your home as well. Increase mulching of gardens to prevent evaporation, to reduce gardens needing watering. So that mulch will keep the moisture in the ground so we don't have to water it as frequently. When purchasing water using fixtures and appliances, select those with the highest water efficiency rating. Installing low flow taps, including push taps, to prevent water wastage through taps being left on. And if you haven't got one already, thinking about converting your toilet to a dual flush and making sure you educate the children. So anything you implement, you need to educate the children on what the best thing to use is and how it impacts the environment. So, and lastly, installing a rainwater tank where you can and connect to toilets and washing machines. Monitor the gauge and relate this to how much water is available for play, and ensure water play and gardening only takes place with tank water is another option. If you can't get a hooly-dooly water tank that connects to the house, another option is you can get these small green ones. I believe they're from Bunnings and other homeware shops, and you just leave the lid open in rainfall, and it collects a decent amount, probably enough to water the garden for the next few days, depending on how heavy the rain was. But it just gives children a good exposure to collecting rainwater and then how you use it. And just another note there with water play, at my service, I would always make sure that when I offered water play to children, I gave them a finite amount. So I would fill up a big tub with water, and I would let them know that was all there was for today, that the rest of the water needed to stay in the ocean or in the rivers, in the lakes for all the creatures who live there. So not just giving children an infinite supply of water. So here's your tub. This is your water allowance for today, you could call it. So if you want to splash it and throw it and everything, that's fine. But once it's gone, it's gone. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And they became a lot more mindful with it because they knew that once the tub was empty, that was it. So they might play with it in the sand for a bit. They might use some of it to tip on the garden. And it would just actually last a lot longer because they knew it wasn't going to continually be, it wasn't going to get continually topped up. So that's a good tip. Let them know in advance. Now, why is water conservation so important in the bigger picture? Australia is the driest inhabited continent on Earth, and yet despite this scarcity of water, Australians are among the highest consumers of water per capita in the world. So with climate change making rainfall less predictable, and in many cases much lower than long-term averages, saving fresh water that we can drink and use has never been more important. Increased water efficiency and conservation measures by Australian households may lessen the demand for freshwater supplies in urban and rural areas. And it's not just rural, it's happening in cities as well, resulting in greater environmental benefits and a sustainable water supply in the future. So we can all play a big part of that in our own home. Okay, next topic, biodiversity. So biodiversity is the variety of living things in a given place, whether it's a small stream, an extensive desert, all the forests in the world, the oceans, they all have biodiversity. It's called, it's short for biological diversity. So biodiversity is important to the health of the world's ecosystems, and that's different communities of living things and their environments, as well as their many interactions. So here are some tips around preserving biodiversity, again from easy to hard. So something you could do that's quite simple is put up native animal posters in your yard and try to identify visitors coming into your garden. You can plant a range of native plants in your garden to provide shelter, nesting, and food for native animals, birds, and insects that might pass through. Again, involve the children, involve the families, ask them what they've got in their garden, ask if anyone has plants that they want to share. Include or retain trees and tall shrubs or dense or spiky lower shrubs that may provide fruit or nectar or seeds, as well as ground cover for plants. So talk to your local nursery or garden expert to select suitable plants for your garden. Tell your families about the actions that you've completed, again in your newsletter. Let them know what you're doing, what your current projects are. You might find that one of your parents is a real garden enthusiast. They might have some tips for you. You can also get some really great insect houses now. So they're kind of all wooden and they've got all little holes in them, and you can hang them up on a wall, and they provide shelter for different insects. So they're great to watch. Add mulch and logs and large flat rocks and stone piles for lizards, animals, and insects that might be in your local area. And you can add a nesting box to your outdoor area to replicate natural shelters such as tree hollows. And they're fun and easy and cheap to make. You can definitely make those from recycled materials or natural materials in your area if you can find some beautiful branches or logs, things like that. So really getting an understanding of what is in your local area and then trying to enhance that in the space that is your own backyard and trying to provide and promote that. So why is biodiversity important? Unfortunately, more than 10% of the 320 land mammals known to have lived in Australia in 1788 are now extinct. So that's a lot of extinction, and that's really unfortunate. But what we want to do is we want to save really cute creatures like this one. This one isn't yet extinct, but it is threatened. So it's called a woylie. And this small kangaroo-like creature, it was first listed as endangered in 1982 after their population became threatened by red foxes. So they reach a maximum weight of 1,850 grams, and they build nests in the ground. So I think that he's very cute, and I would like to do whatever we can to save creatures and animals from becoming extinct. So we can all play a part finding out what lives in our local area and trying to find safety and promoting their well-being as opposed to being a burden. Okay, so another area that we look at is smarter shopping. Can you be a smarter shopper? Is there anything you feel that you could do to better your shopping in regards to sustainability? So again, here's some tips from easy to hard. You can provide reusable shopping bags for dramatic play. So I know that those, especially the plasticky reusable shopping bags, we're all doing a lot of online shopping at the moment, and sometimes it's not a choice but to be bombarded with those reusable plastic bags that we don't actually have a chance to reuse at the moment because we're not going into the supermarket if you're in lockdown. So we can find another use for them. You can cut holes in them and with your smaller children and use them as a paint swap. So cut a head hole and arm holes, and they actually make really good paint smocks for your smaller children. Discuss the impact of plastic bags on our environment. So make sure you educate to the children what it is and why we're reusing it, because we're trying to avoid it going into landfill. They take an extremely long time to break down and have really detrimental effects on the environment. We want to provide opportunities for the children to put away groceries. Discuss where your grocery items have come from using a world map and local maps to compare the distance travelled. So having a look at the back of the packaging, where it was produced, where it's come from, and you could maybe put pins and have a look where all of our shopping's come from and try and really decrease that area of where by shopping local and getting local produce. Involve children in simple green cleaning activities. You can make your own cleaning products with lots of natural materials or simple household materials, bit of vinegar or bicarb, lemon juice, things like that. Making your own cleaning products. It also means that they're going to be non-toxic, so really safe for the children. And biodegradable, no toxins. So that's a fun activity to do, is to make those. And again, share it with your families. Tell them what you're doing and get them to do it at home as well. Buy resources from charity shops such as Lifeline or Red Cross where possible, because again, we're then giving those toys or resources a second life. Provide a take it apart box for children to tinker away and create new items using parts of broken or unwanted items. So discuss for them why it's better for the environment to try and fix things or repair things or even turn something old into something new, rather than just going straight to the catalogue and buying new resources. Sometimes we do need new things, but a lot of the time we can actually reuse things or reinvent things from existing material. Involve children in growing and preparing food and discuss the benefits of growing your own food. Again, this will reduce the amount of food and packaging and transport required to get your food into your service if you can actually grow it yourself. And share that with families as well. If you've got families who are also growing fruit and veggies, have a bit of an exchange system if you want. Have a communal fruit bowl. Everyone puts in their homegrown produce to share. So many great things you can do there. Now, in the big picture, why is smarter shopping important? So you may or may not have heard of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is a collection of marine debris in the North Pacific Ocean. And marine debris is litter that ends up in the ocean, seas, and other large bodies of water. The amount of debris in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch accumulates because much of it is not biodegradable. And many plastics, for instance, they don't wear down. They simply break into tinier and tinier pieces until you've got what you may have heard of microplastics, which is full of the water, fills the water, and that's actually ingested by fish, and then we're actually consuming those microplastics when we're consuming the fish. So it's a really yucky cycle. 80% of plastic in the ocean is estimated to come from land-based sources, with the remaining 20% coming from boats and other marine sources. Scientists and explorers agree that limiting or eliminating our use of disposable plastics or increasing our use of biodegradable resources will be the best way to clean up the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So we want to limit or eliminate disposable plastics as much as possible. So again, have a think about what you could be doing in your home, and use those great tools, those auditing tools, or it could be simply a fun activity with maybe your older children to walk around your home with a clipboard and a pen and write down every time you come across a disposable plastic, whether that be packaging or Glad wrap or straws or anything that you're throwing out, nappies, plastic bags, and think, okay, is this something that we could replace? Wipes is another big one. You can use reusable cloth flannels instead of using wipes constantly throughout the day. There's so much you can do there. Now, we need to think about the messages we're giving children when we select resources for them to use. Are they sustainable, and do they promote sustainable practices? I'm sure we all know the advantages of using wooden materials rather than plastic, and choosing loose parts and items that can be used and reused that either come from nature or are made with recycled materials. So shells, leaves, stones and sticks can be wonderful in construction and creating. When used in transient art experiences, they can be used and reused to create an array of art pieces. So when you have finished some art and craft, see what you can actually take away to use again. So rather than just throwing everything in the bin, what can you use? Can you use the other side of the paper? Can you take the shells away and use them for Play-Doh later on? Clay. Clay is a wonderful tool and resource for children, as it's not only made from natural elements, but it can also be used and reused multiple times. More and more, the benefits of children using clay before they use their muscles for writing is being known. So it's fantastic for developing the muscles required for fine motor activity. So by doing clay, they're getting really strong in those fine muscles, and they can then be really confident and good at fine motor activities like writing or cutting. What about mud? Have you ever met a child that doesn't love playing in mud? Or using junk mail. So let the children take it from your letterbox and then work together to reuse it as another source of paper. There's so much that comes into our homes. We just need to open our minds and be creative ourselves as to what we can use. And then before things go out of our home, thinking, can I give this another life? I can't look at empty paint pots now before, just as I'm about to throw them in the bin. I always think, this would be a really good glue pot or a paint pot, or I can put those, trinkets or something in it. So there's so much before you put something out to the rubbish. Have a think what you can do. And if you can't think of anything, ask the children, what can we do with this? And they will surely find a creative use for it. Okay, so helping children love nature. We have covered our first topic, how can we make our family daycare services more sustainable by using less of our Earth's resources. This is also important because we not only use less resources when we do it mindfully, but we also model this to the children. But a large part of our role as an educator thinking about sustainability is helping children love nature. And most of you know, children generally have an instinctive affinity with nature. Helping children love nature will help ensure they grow up to want to preserve our Earth and its natural resources. So ECEEN's audit asks these questions, and I want you to, as I read through them, take a minute to have a think about how this relates to your practice and your service. Are you as an educator aware of the value of experiences in or with nature? So do you enjoy going outside into the outdoor environment? Do you explore questions with children around sustainability and nature? Are children encouraged to respect the life of all creatures? So think about your role modeling there. Do children have access to books and other resources on nature? Have a think what you have available at the service. If a child is really inquisitive about nature, is there something or somewhere in your service they could go to find out more information? It might be using technology. You might look up some information. You might have some books and puzzles. Do children have an opportunity to care for animals or living creatures? So what happened the last time you saw a big spider? How did you react when the children were around? Or a snail or a worm? Or maybe you have pets in your home that the children are exposed to. Do children have the opportunity to actively take part in growing food at your home? Can you grow anything? And I understand, especially in cities, we can be a bit poor of space. We don't all have the luxury of beautiful big gardens and backyards, but that shouldn't hinder your ability to show children how to grow things. There's nothing will replace the growing the seeds in the cotton wool, just so that you can see that process of them breaking out of the seeds. And showing things living. You can have beautiful herb gardens on the windowsill. There's so much you can do. And lastly, does your garden include local native plants that use less water and attract native wildlife? So if you don't have any pets as such or animals in your home, you can certainly be attracting wildlife for children to watch and observe and learn about. And just going back to that point, if as an educator you're aware of the value and experiences with nature, you are a key role model to the children that you care for. So just think about how you connect with nature. Do you take time every day to do so? Do you show a great respect for natural things? And think about, okay, maybe you don't really enjoy going outside. Maybe you're more of an indoorsy person, but the children might pick up on that. So have a think how you can make the outdoor environment more inviting. And if it's inviting to you with plants and colours and natural resources, then it's going to be really great for the children too. So the following suggestions come from the Growing Minds resource. You can involve the children in growing flowers, herbs and veggies. Flowers can encourage beneficial insects into your garden. Herbs make great smells, so sensory experiences. And veggies can be used to make a salad for the kids. So just simple cooking experiences, that's all you need. Growing plants from seeds and monitoring their growth process. Incorporate natural sensory elements into play, so adding herbs to Play-Doh. It can be really nice to add rosemary into Play-Doh and the children smell it, or if you've got a little pot of lavender. You might like to use other herbs, mint, parsley, dill, and find ways to incorporate it into your lunches and meals. Making mud pies, so having lots of resources outdoors where they can do that. Just having a blank space in your garden. I'm seeing that more and more in services now, where you'll go out and there'll just be a patch of blank dirt, and it's for the children to dig and get dirty and feel dirt and soil. Encourage activities that relate to different seasons. So in autumn, we're going to rake the leaves and discuss the difference between seasons. Let the children go out in winter, rug them up and let them go out, let them feel how cold it can be so that they understand that. Create temporary art using sticks and twigs, branches, string, flower heads, ferns. Get really crafty with natural resources, because the simple act of children touching those natural resources, so whether it's bark or flowers, while they're doing their craft, they get really close to it. Children are much better at noticing small details than us, and they might get really absorbed into looking at the fine details of the flower, the petals, the inside, what the bark feels like, twigs, how all the twigs are quite different. They'll really pick up on that detail. Encourage children and families to bring in natural treasures and dedicate regular show and tell sessions to natural things, getting them to come in with those. And watch tadpoles grow, or look for lizards in your dry creek bed. That's just making sure you maximize what's in your local area. Talk to children about who they're sharing their outdoor play space with, so the birds, the insects, the butterflies, and what types of environments that these children like to live in. You can go on a safari in your own backyard or walk to a nearby park. Take some binoculars to spot birds and use magnifying glasses to observe small creatures. Again, this picture is so good at demonstrating that children are a lot better at observing finer detail that we are. They're much closer to the ground, and they really connect with smaller things that us as adults tend to overlook. Take photos of birds and animals that you see and then identify them using the internet or books or posters. Look for lizards where they're around large stones, those little skinks even, you can find them in backyards. Observe and discuss different life cycles of different animals. So tadpoles, butterflies are common ones that we look at. Use a flower press to dry flowers and identify different types of flowers, especially native ones. Work together to create habitat for different animals and mini beasts, such as making nesting boxes or the insect homes that I mentioned before. You can purchase those, or you could even make one out of recycled wood and cardboard. Talk about the range of homes for animals and play a matching game. So who lives where? Make up stories about supporting local wildlife using photos or drawings of the children making animal homes in your outdoor area. Alternatively, you could learn a song about native animals that you could perform to parents. Align activities and national and international events relating to biodiversity, including National Sea Week, which is in early March, National Tree Day in July on my birthday, and Biodiversity Month and National Threatened Species Day, which is in September. So making sure you incorporate those events, and that's another way of embedding things. So we embed it into our monthly calendar or our daily program, so that we're constantly celebrating those events and recognizing them and educating the children. Okay, so educating children about sustainability. As well as engendering a love of nature in children, you also need to actively teach them about sustainability and why it's so important. Some people that work with children suggest that there are 3 separate ways you can educate children about sustainability. The first one is in the environment. So you get in the environment. Education in the environment is a teaching approach that has children engaged in activities in the environment. The second one is about the environment. So about the environment has children gaining knowledge of environmental issues. And the last one is for the environment. So for the environment is teaching children how to make change guided by their experience in the environment and the knowledge that they have gained. So these three concepts cannot be taught independently of each other. Rather, they need to be taught together as a whole. So there's many ways to teach children about sustainability, and I've got a list here. The first one, which we've discussed, is be a role model. We can incorporate it into all other learning, so make sure it's entwined in other things. If you're teaching a numeracy activity, for example, you could use leaves for counters, or using posters that show environmental imagery for other learning activities. Actively teach why we turn off lights and save water. So remember, it's not just about teaching children what to do, but they need to understand why we do it. Ensure children have lots of access to nature and explain how it is threatened. And you can always bring the natural environment inside. You can have beautiful potted plants. You can have herb gardens inside on the windowsill. You can have use stumps as little seats if you want. Lots of natural material, bringing it in. Learn yourself and share this learning with children. Make sure you're educating yourself. If you leave tonight thinking that you've got so many great ideas and sustainability is something you definitely want to increase at your service, educate yourself, take some time. Hopefully tonight's PD session has taught you a lot, but you can continue that learning. We're going to send you lots of great resources and also through our Facebook page. Get great books about sustainability issues to share, so you can get age-appropriate ones for the children in your care, and you can get adult ones for yourself. And involve the children in a sustainable cause, so have a great goal together. I'm sure you can think of many more than this. The important message to get across is simple. We are using more of the Earth's resources than what the Earth can regenerate, and we all have to play our part to stop doing that. So I've got a second video here for us now. This one goes for about 8 minutes, and it's to inspire you about the importance of teaching children about sustainability. So let's watch that now.
How do we create a future in which both people and nature can thrive? This is the biggest question of our time. In the next few decades, we need to do something unprecedented, achieve a sustainable existence on Earth. But how do we do it? We can start by understanding how we got to this point. 20,000 years ago, humankind consisted of less than 1 million hunter-gatherers across the globe. We lived within the resources on the birds on Earth. There's very little wild left. This biodiversity loss is not just a tragedy. It's the single biggest problem we face. Without biodiversity, the world as we know it doesn't work. Our planet needs its wild spaces. Every one is a component in the global machine. Only if they are all healthy can the planet run smoothly. Diversity equals stability, and stability is what we need most of all. Can we turn this situation around? Can we rewild the world? Well, maybe, due to one key change. As societies develop, something is happening that has never happened before. People are having fewer children. Globally, since the year 2000, the number of people under 16 years old has hardly changed. The main reason our population is still rising is because people are living longer. If this continues, our population may finally stop growing by the turn of the century. By investing in education and women's rights and raising people out of poverty, we could bring about peak human even sooner. This changes everything. It gives us the opportunity we need to regain our balance. Reduce our impact by making sure that everything we do, we can do forever. For the biggest gains, we could concentrate our efforts on 4 goals: phasing out fossil fuels and replacing them with renewables. This will not only slow the warming of the planet and the acidification of the ocean, but it will lead to clean air for all of us. Upgrading to efficient food production and reducing our consumption of meat. We'll require far less space to provide for ourselves, leaving more for grasslands, reducing deforestation and our demand for fresh water, and feeding more people with healthier, more affordable food. Working together to properly manage our ocean. A global working hard to keep hold of the wild populations we still have, encouraging nature wherever we can. In the ocean, on land we no longer need, and even in our cities. If we make these changes, we'll be a long way to becoming a species in balance with nature once again. We will have taken a remarkable journey, from 1 million people struggling to survive, to several billion living long, healthy lives on a stable planet, able to provide for all our needs. Only at that point will the Anthropocene, the age of humans, be truly underway. At that point, we will be proud to call it our planet. How do we create a future in which both people and nature can thrive? We open our eyes to this moment in history. Think on a planetary scale. Embrace the challenge we face. And do something we humans are very good at. Change the world.
Okay, great video. He makes it sound very simple. So now we're going to move on to our final interview. This is with Lisa Bryant, and she interviews Julie Gaul from ECEEN. After this interview, we're going to have question time. So if anyone does have any questions, please take the time, if you want to, throughout the video, to put those questions in the chat box, and I will be sure to get to those after the interview.
Hello and welcome. I'm really excited to have with me today Julie Gaul. Julie is from ECEEN, the Early Childhood Education Environmental Network. Have I got that right?
Well, almost, yes. The Early Childhood, yes, Environmental Education Network is right.
Great. And that's a New South Wales organisation. Julie, can you just tell us a little bit about your background in sustainability and early childhood, which I know has encompassed many, many years. We don't need to say exactly how many
How
years.
many? No, that's good. But we know I'm in that category.
Yeah.
So eScene actually started officially back in 2004. So there was a little bit of getting together before then. And the idea was the group was actually started with a grant from the Environmental Trust, or what was then the EPA, the Environmental Protection Authority. And that was because that department then saw that environmental education should start at birth and wanted the early childhood sector to be involved. So they started a group of peak early childhood organisation representatives meeting, and I think that was around about 2003. And that came about because Sue Elliott, who is probably the guru of early childhood environmental education in Australia, had done research for them on what was happening around environmental education in New South Wales. And that research was called Patches of Green. And so the idea of forming the network was to connect those patches and green up the early childhood sector.
And so why environmental education for children? Like, out of all the things you could specialise in your early childhood career, why environmental education?
Well, I suppose, it does go back to our early experiences of life. And mine was very much outdoors and in nature, and that awe and wonder and wondering how we fit into this world was always something that was a big part of my life. And so naturally I wanted to bring that into my work in early childhood. I wasn't sure at the time how that would ever evolve. So I think it demonstrates you've just got to hang on to those things that you love and value, and the opportunity arises. And so then I was also noticing at the time the change in children's lives, to the childhood I was fortunate enough to have, to children's lives being much more indoors. There was less opportunity for children to engage with nature and find out that we were just part of a much, much bigger thing. And because those opportunities weren't there for children, and particularly in early childhood settings, the regulations had become more and more restrictive about children being outdoors. So I saw that there was a real need for this, and was happy to join with others to see what we could do.
So, okay, I can understand the need for children to be more connected with their environment, but why is the concept of sustainability so important in early education? Is that the main reason, because of the need to get children connected with their environment?
No, really, because that's been very much part of early childhood, hasn't it? Kindergarten is children being in the garden, which is more that romantic view, I think, of children. For me, it was about us being able to recognise that we're just one part of a bigger system, that humans aren't the ones that should dominate the earth, that we need to respect and know where our place is within the big system, and that whatever we do makes an impact on a whole lot of other things in the world in which we live. So we have to start with understanding that concept and then move to how we can care for our world and make it.
It's funny, I think sometimes perhaps with the regulations in the NQF, educators understand that their service needs to be sustainable and are looking at, the basics like recycling and water tanks, etc., but haven't necessarily thought about environmental education of children. Are you finding that at all, or am I seeing a slightly different thing than what you're saying?
No, I think I agree with you on that. I think it's a complex concept, I think, sustainability, and I think the word doesn't really help share what it's about either.
What's your definition of it?
Well, I think it's a way of seeing. It's a different perspective. So it's seeing us as being part of the earth, not the earth being there for our use. And I think it's also that impacts on the way we behave. So if we're to behave in a way that cares for the resources of the earth, so the air, the water and the soil, we're probably not going to do a lot of things that we might already be doing. So composting might be part of that, but it's certainly not all of it. And for it to happen just in our workplace is probably not enough either. You know, sometimes these things have to start with us personally.
We're lucky with family daycare, obviously, because home and workplace are the same.
Yes.
Yeah. So you are seeing people that don't see it as their responsibility to impart in sustainability knowledge to children, or gender?
I think people want to. I think we did some more research with Sue Elliott back in 2015, I think that was 14, and that was that found that the biggest inhibitor for early childhood educators in taking up sustainable practices was a lack of confidence. And so I think that we are under a lot of pressure in early childhood to conform to a whole lot of regulations. So it makes it seem more difficult than it is. People who are doing it say it's just so much easier than they had imagined before. So I think, you know, it's like any change. We have to really apply ourselves to it. So just like getting fit, you know, we often have to think about it for quite a while and then find an easy way to get into it. So
I must do that soon.
Yes, exactly. So
Okay,
it's making it a priority.
Yeah. From my conversations with family daycare educators, I get the sense that a large majority have the basics in place. They understand, you know, about composting, they understand about recycling, they turn off light switches, etc. But they'd like to go further. What are the top 3 things that you could suggest that every educator could, you know, do immediately to make their family daycare more sustainable, or to help children learn about sustainability?
Well, I think the probably top 3 things, or top 3 people, talk to the families. So talk to parents about their interest in sustainability so that this can be something that you do together. I think recognising how competent and capable children are and getting them involved in finding solutions to problems that they might be encountering. And then it's looking for hopeful solutions to it, because I think we do get disillusioned about moving forward. So I think often it can be getting out the gate and having a look at what's happening and getting to know our neighbourhood. And I often, when we walk out the gate with young children, the first thing they notice is the wrong things in the wrong place. So that'll be waste. And so then we can talk about where that plastic bag in the gutter after the garbage men have been, why is it there? How did it get there? Where's it going to end up when it rains? Is it going to end up down the road and in the river, near the river or the creek, and then causing some damage to life there? So whether it's the frogs or the fish or the birds, And so we can have a look at those natural systems, then just link to that for the educators to learn more about what nature is out the gate as well, or in the backyard.
I get really worried because some family daycare services have stopped their educators from going anywhere near bodies of water because of a drowning that happened some years ago in a family daycare service. What kind of things can family daycare educators do outside the gate that are useful?
Well, I think it starts with slowing down. So just, we can learn a lot just from following children's leads. Children are innately connected to nature, so they'll notice life as soon as they walk out the gate. They'll hear the birds, they'll see the weed that's in the crack in the footpath. Stop and have a look and listen to the children's questions about those things. It can start with something that small. I remember Costa from Gardening Australia saying one of the great ways to start the day is to find your favourite plant and watch it for 5 minutes and look at who comes to visit it. So is that, a pollinator? Is it a native bee? Is it going to be a hoverfly? It could be a butterfly, could be a caterpillar that's on there eating the leaves. But we need the time to slow down and stop and have a look and take the lead from the children. They've got those really good detective eyes. So I think for getting out the gate, it's that building up confidence in yourself that you can manage the children, but also letting the children know about the risks and helping the children assess the risks with you together about what could be dangerous, what could be good, and to think about the benefits as well as the risk and weighing up if it's worth doing it. And I think the benefits nearly always outweigh the risks.
You were talking to me yesterday about some of the specific places that you imagined that educators could go, like community gardens. Can you tell us a bit more about them?
Yes, well, I could share. Yes, so one of the places that few of us go to, and they've got so much great information, is our local government website. So if you look on your local government website, they'll list often the community gardens that are in your area. I think community gardens are such a great space for family day carers. They're usually enclosed, so once you're in, so that it's a safe place to go to. The people at the community gardens are often very welcoming for children and always need a hand in looking after their community gardens. And I know Waverley Council's family daycare have made a real thing of being part of their local community garden, which isn't far away for them, but they actually hold their family daycare sessions in the community garden. So they've built up a wonderful relationship with the other gardeners. They've also got their own patch and they share their produce with each other and learn more gardening skills while they're there. So community gardens are a great place to start. If you don't have community gardens, the other department within a council that's really good to link with is the Bush Regeneration Group, because they'll be able to let you know about great child-friendly bushwalks that you can do together. And they'll be short enough, so they might only be a half-hour walk, or as you're trying to build up strength to get through those. So that's another good place to start.
And what about, when you do say, go to a park, what's a good way to start with children in a park?
In a park, well, I think perhaps let's try making that park a place. Start to make it to be your place that you go back to. So have a look at the features that the children notice first. Often that's the trees. And that they'll go and connect with the tree and where you'll be able to feel the bark. Or the tree will be a particular shape. And often the children will want to give that tree a name because of some characteristic they've noticed about it. Sometimes you'll notice when branches come off trees, they leave an impression that looks like an eye. So what could the tree be looking at? What can the tree see? Talking about the tree and what makes up the tree, learning together more about that tree and who planted it. Was that tree there when the First Nations people were here and roaming that land? So then you can trace back the history of the site. So then the children learn more about that site. I know as a child I was fortunate enough to know a lot about the history of where I used to play, and that gave me that sense of belonging. So we know about how important relationships are, but we often forget about our relationship to place and how important that is.
So what are the places that you really like taking children? Where do you take your grandchildren? Do you have grandchildren?
I sure do.
And where do you take them?
And our favourite place is where there's water. So that might not be what family day carers want to do first, but you can do that safely. And if anyone wants any more support around that, they're welcome to contact me. But my most favourite place is a river, and it's a tributary. It flows into the Murray River. It's called in the Kiewa Valley in northeast Victoria. And there is a great big rock that goes into the river, and we often lie on that in the summer, and then when you get too hot, you slide off into the water and cool off. And there are lots of river stones, and my grandsons have spent every holiday there. So I think for them it's their very special place too.
That's great.
Yeah.
We know that, you know, family daycare educators have so much to do. You know, they've got to look out for a million things. They've got to think of a million things. You know, they're amongst the busiest educators I know. How do we make sure that it's not just sustainability isn't just something that they feel like they have to do for assessment and rating?
Rating, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to do a bit of an ad here for eScene but I think this is really going to help everybody. We developed this book called EcoSmart, and you've got the family daycare version, but this is very user-friendly, so I'd recommend it. And what that book does is help you to put sustainability into each of the quality areas. So it's not an add-on, it's your way of doing things, your way of acting. So for instance, in quality area 2, we talk about children's health and safety. Well, we know there's lots of research around children being outdoors and in nature makes them physically stronger, mentally healthier, and us too. We've heard a lot about this during COVID, haven't we, about how important it is for us to get outdoors to keep calm. So as well as keeping your chemicals safe or not having them, think about all those things that can help our physical and mental well-being by relating to nature. Yeah, and caring for plants, there's lots of research around when children care for plants. So in growing plants, they end up caring for each other more because you're building that ethos of caring. So growing plants and knowing how delicate they are, yes, sure, we'll lose a few when we're really young, but that's all part of it. So, and learning from our mistakes.
Some of us manage that when we're not young.
That's right. But early childhood's great because we We know about making mistakes. We know about play as a way of learning and discovering. So we can do that with plants. And the great thing about plants is not only can we grow things that we can eat, but we can also grow things that are habitat for other things to come and visit us, other wildlife to come and visit. So if you're lucky enough to have a backyard, you might want to get involved in something called the B&B Highway, which is about planting for native bees and pollinators. And then you can get it, or you can get involved in watching the birds that come to visit, whether it's in your backyard or the park that you visit.
Or the frogs.
Or the frogs, and then get involved in citizen science. So then how we're being great scientists. So that's all part of Quality Area 3, of course, and Quality Area 1 is all about the teaching and the language and all of that. So once we get into this and put sustainability into every quality area, it's not an add-on, it's what we do.
One of the things that you always notice about children is how much they absolutely love, animals and insects as well.
Yes.
How can family daycare educators, exploit this natural love of these things with children?
Well, I think what I said before, if you can slow the day, try and decrease the procedures and follow the children's lead and slow the day when they do discover that insect, and then let them ask the questions. So where are we going to find more information about that insect? What I think is so wonderful about all of this is that we can learn together, because building what we call our eco-literacy is really important, because that's how we learn how interconnected we are. We won't know that we're going to we've lost millions of insect species because we spray chemicals, unless we learn what insect species need to live.
One of the things that I think is really exciting is that educators who don't know a lot about the environment can learn with children about the environment. It doesn't need to be one of those things that you need to be an expert in. And I love the fact that you talked about slowing the day down, because some of our we've done about 7 or 8 topics now in this particular program, and it's amazing how so many people have said that for so many different reasons. It's not just for environmental reasons, it's not just sustainability, but it's just about making everything a bit more slower, then you can do things more purposefully.
I think so, and we know that the calmer we are, the better we learn. So it all adds up, doesn't it? And the other thing I think that probably all of your other topics have covered, which is a really key part of sustainability, is that recognising how capable and competent children are, and and encouraging them to be global citizens, to be carers of their planet. And in saying that, can I just do an ad for a film?
You sure can. I want to know what a scene can do for educators.
Yeah, but this is a film that's really cheap if you want to buy the DVD.
We can't quite see it.
Is that better?
Yeah. Yep.
2040 is the name of the film.
Yep.
And I recommend that family daycarers watch this and get their families to watch it as well, because the film is all about a family with a 4-year-old daughter, and the lead in it is asking what's the world going to be like for his daughter in 2040, and then talks about the actions that we can all take together to make our 2040 as positive as possible. So I think it's a really nice thing for early childhood in particular, but but especially family daycare, because family daycarers are probably our most powerful early childhood educators because of the richness of the relationship they have with families.
And can you tell us a bit about a scene? How can a scene help family daycare?
Yeah, well, we've developed we've always had lots of family daycare members in eScene. We're happy to have you as members, but you don't have to be. You can just contact us and get involved. We have an encouragement award called the Sprouts Awards, which are coming up. So if you're doing some sustainability projects that you would like to share, we encourage you to enter the Sprouts Awards. The family daycarers could become individual members of eScene, and that's only $60 for the year. And then units could join as at a service price, which is $120 a year. But in becoming a member and buying the book EcoSmart, we can give you a certification that says that you're becoming an EcoSmart centre, which lets your families and others know that you're on your journey to becoming more sustainable. Because, as you said, Lisa, all these actions around environmental education and sustainability, we never ever get there. It's a continual improvement, and continually we're finding out more and more new science that changes the way we act. So the other thing eScene has is a Facebook page, so people might like to have a look there, because we do put on free online sessions every now and then. We haven't got one coming up immediately, but we just had one on bees and pollinators, which was really well received. So check out the Facebook page.
Link that on our Facebook page, everyone, so that everyone knows how to get to the eScene.
Great, yeah, and that'll lead them to the website and find out more.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Julie. It's been great having you here, and maybe we can both go and have a walk in the environment right now.
Oh, let's do that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Okay, what a great interview. That was really enjoyable. And I really appreciate how they said, sustainability is a complex topic, and sometimes we just need to have that confidence to go ahead and to implement those needed practices. So that was really good. Okay, so we now have time for questions. We're getting to the end of tonight's session. We have had some great questions come through during the interview, so I'm going to go through those now. If you do think of anything else, you can keep posting, and we'll try to get to a few this evening. So the first one that came through, someone had a great question about a suggestion to replace the nappy bags when disposing nappies, something that you can use instead of those plastic bags, because obviously in early childhood we're going through a lot of those in a day. So something I've heard another educator do is use recycled paper towel. The main purpose of those nappy bags, I guess, is to eliminate the odour. So wrapping up dirty nappies in the recycled paper towel, it can be really effective in minimising the odour and reducing the soft plastics going into the rubbish. So that could be a good option. Someone else asked about the water tank that I mentioned that you can have if you can't have one of those special ones connected to the downpipes and things. You can just get a simple, they're quite small, probably about 1 metre high. They're just from Bunnings. They're a green water tank, and the lid comes off, so it just catches rain. You take the lid off when it rains, and then it's got a little tap and a nozzle down the bottom. So they're very simple, they're compact, they're easy for children to understand the process of catching rain in the top and, excuse me, having the tap down the bottom. Okay, another great question that we had come through was asking the best way to document and highlight sustainable practices to assessment and rating officers during assessment and rating. So sometimes it's hard to display or convey exactly how much your service is doing, and things can sometimes get overlooked, which is a bit disheartening. If you're doing really a really good job in your sustainability practices, then you want to be able to convey that and you want it to be shown. So some simple ideas I could offer is potentially having a standalone sustainability policy for your service. So looking into what that might look like. Some services have sustainability mentioned in several different policies, but you can actually have a standalone sustainability policy, which encompasses everything that you're doing as an educator and what it looks like at your service. And as we heard in the interview, the great thing about family daycare is that our place of business and our home is the same spot. So something we can certainly work on in both our home. Anything that we do in our home, we're then doing in our workplace. So think about having a standalone sustainability policy. Something else you can do is have it reflected in your philosophy. More and more now we're seeing services mention sustainable practices in their philosophy and highlighting that it's something that your service is really passionate about, and that then therefore like-minded families and parents can come along and find a service like yours that is offering all those sustainable practices. Some other ideas of how to document or highlight or capture, I guess, your sustainable practices is to also include it in regular child observations on a regular basis. So do observations about what you're doing with the children in terms of educating them on sustainability, and any activities or programs that you have, having it a focal point of regular documentation, because that's a really easy thing to then show as evidence of what you've been doing in terms of sustainability. You can also, if you're using your CEQA Quality Improvement Plan template, you can document any sustainable practices in there in the exceeding section. So if you are doing critical reflection about sustainability, or it is embedded, or you are engaging family and community, then this might be a point of exceeding for you. And you can document that in the quick template, or however it is that you document your quality improvement plan, and make it a point of exceeding. So that's another great idea. And lastly, any time that you're educating the families at your service or engaging with communities, there was some great ideas in that interview where they mentioned community gardens and being aware of what your local council is doing. So anytime you're engaging the community or educating your families, not just the children, but sharing information with the parents and carers, highlight that as well, document it, and keep that as evidence. So I hope that helps in terms of best ways to document and highlight sustainable practices. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this evening and sharing those questions. That does bring us to the end of our session this evening. Please remember that we will be sending you further readings, handpicked, so you get the really good stuff. Look out for these in your email. You can also participate in the Facebook group if you haven't already joined. You can open your Facebook and type in PD in your pocket. Can I just remind everyone also to use the Facebook group, not just to talk about the mechanics of PD in your pocket. It's a great place to talk about what you're doing in relation to the topics and to see what other people are doing, and post pictures. We love to see visuals of what you're doing as well. So thank you everybody for participating in and watching or listening to this session if you're on our podcast. And I'll leave you all now to go and be sustainable. Okay, thanks everybody. Bye.